In this video, we're gonna make a game in 3 days, but my brother is a 3D designer and knows nothing about pixel art, and to make things even worse, we have no idea which engine we're gonna use.
So we decided to plan what kind of game we're going to make instead of thinking about that.
We wanna make a game focused on speed and fluidity of movement.
Like if Sonic and Celeste had a child.
And with that decided, my brother went to start making our character, and I was in charge of choosing the engine. But I couldn't decide between Unity and Game Maker, and since my brother had already started learning pixel art, we couldn't waste any more time. I had to choose an engine quickly. I decided to start with Game Maker since it's the most popular engine for 2D projects and seems pretty chill to learn.
While my brother was studying, I had already spent a few hours watching pixel art tutorials on YouTube, and I felt ready, or at least that's what I thought, cause the first masterpiece I made was this. So realizing I had no idea of what I was doing, I went to watch even more videos. After receiving all the knowledge I needed and finally understanding what was missing, I managed to improve the chicken I made and also create this random character with a running animation just to practice. And I think it turned out kinda okay for a first try, but that gave me a lot of confidence and made me feel extremely ready, so I started making our main character. I took a lot of inspiration from Ristar and Sonic, and well,
It isn't very good, but yeah, it is something.
after being humiliated, I started polishing the character until it had a more acceptable shape, because the first one was so ugly that I deleted the body and started making the character in parts, which helped a lot since I could focus on one part at a time. I added this cool hairstyle heavily inspired by a phoenix, and I think it looks pretty nice, and it helps to give the agile vibe one for the game.
After not finding any tutorials explaining the engine's programming in depth, I went to talk to my brother so he could decide what to do. And this is what happened. Pretty hard to find good tutorials. What do you think we should do?
I don't know, let's go to Unity.
So we downloaded Unity, since I have way more experience working with it. But after installing it and remembered the incident where they wanted to charge fees per game download, and seeing that the number of tutorials dropped a lot after that, I wasn't feeling like using it for this challenge.
So once again we were in the drama of not knowing which engine to use, and we were already thinking about going back to Game Maker.
Until my brother suggested that we could try using Godot.
After installing it, we liked it right away. It looks simple but not incomplete, and reminded me a lot of Blender, which is open source and free.
Yeah boy.
So for me, it was decided, we were going to use Godot.
Seeing Godot working already felt way more welcoming to me. It seemed like it had all the features I would need. Plus, it's an engine that's been getting a lot of attention recently, so there are tons of tutorials available. And it was really easy to find good resources to learn it. So yeah, Godot seemed like a great choice.
But right after that, another problem happened.
My PC simply started freezing a lot due to lack of memory, so I decided to restore it and make it brand new.
With everything decided about the engine, while my brother was restoring his PC, I could finally focus back on the project, so I decided to continue working on the character. I made his body and tail and a sword that was supposed to look like a feather, but yeah, it doesn't. I made a wing, duplicated, and painted the one in the back a darker tone to give the impression of death. And now everything was ready. I just needed to touch up the shading and separate the body parts to start animating. I made the idol, and no, idol isn't cute girl, it's the character animation for when he is standing still. I made a simple variant just for style and to ask for your like, and with that out of the way, I moved on to make the walking animation. But then I realized animating the entire character was way more work than I expected, and to make it worse, I animated the legs individually, so the animation ended up looking kinda weird.
And just like that, the first day came to an end, and there were only 2 days left.
I had already spent an entire day making the character and animations, so I moved on to making the tile sets. I watched the random YouTube tutorial and it was really helpful, because I learned that the tiles need to be symmetrical to fit perfectly. At first, I wanted to make a ground similar to Ristar's, which gave a more 3D look that I found really different for pixel art, but I found too difficult, so I just made some standard 2D platforms. Then, I made some ramps, which from what I saw, are going to give my brother a lot of trouble to make work properly. But it'll be worth it, and they are must-have since our game needs a lot of movement options.
Now that the PC was ready, I could finally get back to work. So the first thing I did was put the character into the Godot with the animation my brother made. Then I adjusted the camera so it was closer and better positioned when I hit play. After that, I added a strip to the character so we could move around the map. And there we go, moving on the screen, everything working fine so far. After having a moving character, I started making the ground so we wouldn't just be floating in the void. But we needed to add a collision so we wouldn't fall through the ground. So I painted the collision shapes for the ramp tiles so they wouldn't have a normal square collision.
Since they are not square.
And after that, we could already do a little moonwalk with the bird and walk around the level we had. Then I attached the camera to the player so it would follow us around. I expanded the level so we wouldn't just have a single platform, and after seeing that we weren't getting stuck on the ramps,
I jumped into the map and painted it with the tiles I made to test how things were working. After that, I finished the first part of the tile set and went to see how to make a parallax with our friend ChatGPT. I understood absolutely nothing, but I decided to draw it anyway, and if it broke, I'll fix it later. So I sketched the scene, adding the sky with mountains in the background and a lake in front, along with a platform to just get an idea of how the parallax would look. And surprisingly, I ended up making the 3D looking platform I originally wanted, but I couldn't use it in the game because there was no time to redo the tile set and replace the old one. With the parallax sketch done, I felt like something was missing, so I added a flower field inspired by Sonic 2's Sunflower Field. I also made some clouds for the sky, which looked absolutely terrible, so I had to watch a tutorial on how to make pixel art clouds properly. After that, they turned out acceptable. With the clouds done, I started adding detail to the mountains. I wanted to make them more bluish, to give the feeling of distance caused by the atmosphere, but I forgot to do that and stay like this, because I had already started working on the foreground layer, which is usually darker, so I simplified it as much as I could and moved on to making the trees, which I knew would be painful. I hate making trees, so I made just one model and modified it to create different trees.
I added the feathers my brother made into Godot as a kind of a collectible.
I forgot to record this part, but it's not that important.
After seeing that the animation was working correctly, I placed some feathers on the map so we could collect them. I also tested programming in Godot to get more familiar with the engine. So I created a code that prints I'm a feather when the game starts. Then I checked if the collision worked when the player touched the feather, and seeing feather collected appear on the screen was enough to know it was working. So I made the feather despawn when collected. I also made this moving platform which I didn't record, but it basically moves from one point to another using Godot's animation system. After that, I added a collider that resets the game if the player falls.
It was about time. I was already tired of having to close and open to reset the game.
After that, I implemented the enemy logic using a red square for now, while my brother hadn't made the enemy yet. I wanted a patrol system, where the enemy moves back and forth. I created two variables, a start and an end point. But since the enemy was moving at a speed of 30 on the x-axis, and I was checking if its x position was exactly equal to point A or B, which was 80 or minus 80, it was obvious it would never match. Because adding 30 would never land exactly on 80, it will always be 60 or 90, positive or negative. So instead of checking if it was equal, I checked if it was greater or smaller, and after that, it started working. And after winning that war, I went to rest because I'm not made of iron.
So while I watched my brother lying down while I worked, I chose this fancy vulture that apparently exists in Brazil. I simplified as much as I could to save time, since we only had one day left, and I didn't want to spend forever animating like it was with the main character. So a simple design was perfect for it to be the basic enemy for the game. I made the worst animation possible and exported as fast as I could.
After coming back, I replaced the red square with the vulture my brother made, and after making flip in the direction it was moving, everything was fine.
Well, it's flying backwards at the start of the animation, right?
Yeah, but we ignored that. I just had to flip the sprites, but I didn't do it. And that's how day 2 ended.
At the start of day 3, I started thinking about the running animation since we wanted something more dynamic. I went on YouTube to look for dinosaurs running in videos and found this animation that was perfect for inspiration. But I only made a rough sketch of the character because time was running out and I still had a lot to do to bring the map to life. So I made some bushes for decoration, then I made the dash animation that my brother and I wanted, which ended up very simplified.
After that, I added the other character animation my brother made, and after a bit of time our flaming woodpecker already had an idle and walkie animations. But I had to lower the speed because he was lying too much. And done.
Impressive.
After the huge effort of reducing the character speed, I needed to make him run and dash, but even though the sprites changed, the animation wasn't playing. I changed the code and it worked, so it's all good. Then I decided to expand the map, which was still very small. I started walking around the map and it was already becoming really fun to move. After playtesting and adjusting the movement speed of each animation, I added the parallax my brother made, which completely changed how the game looked. While testing, I noticed we could kind of fly after using the dash and then jumping, which I actually found it pretty fun and decided to keep it for now.
We wanted to implement two mechanics, one using the dash to climb walls and the other running up the walls, but my brother ended up implementing both so you could choose which one is better.
Neither of them is finished yet, but you can already get an idea of how each one works. After all that, I decided to rework the map to make a more polished level. I focused on creating areas where we could really run since the game is more about speed than pure platforming. I decided that our goal would be to collect a giant feather at the end. Then I decorated the map with some trees and plants to make the game prettier. I adjusted the parallax again and I'd say it looks much better. But there are still issues with the dash and the wall running that I didn't fix because I'll need to study more and learn how the Godot really works.
We still didn't add combat and attack mechanics, but I think we learned a lot already, and it was really fun.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching.
See ya!
Bye bye!